and welcome to Conversations with Dr. Stephen Greer. This is Dr. Greer, and I'm the founder of the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, that's CSETI.org, and disclosureproject.org. And I'd like to thank the folks at the World Puja Networks for kindly allowing us this time every 2 weeks to bring you up to date on what's happening with ET contact and global disclosure and new energy for 2012. And I'm really excited about the guest that we have today, Marilyn, who has been a very important new member of our team over the last 2 or 3 years, is the head of our contact group up in New York, and she is here with us to talk about the sorts of experiences that they have been having, but also to talk about the key aspect of consciousness in making contact with transdimensional interstellar conscious ET beings from other star systems, and that this is really where the action is. And because Marilyn is so expert in her knowledge in not only human psychology and consciousness, but deep spirituality, she immediately understood the connection between communication and thought and consciousness and transdimensional civilizations that move amongst the stars faster than the speed of light in other dimensions. And she has had just the most amazing experiences, and I'm really, really pleased to have her here today. So welcome, Marilyn. I'm glad you're with us today to talk about this.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, great. Well, why don't you share a little bit about your recent experiences and your ideas about contact as you see it, as it's modulated through consciousness and thought, because I think everyone has their own great way of expressing and explaining this that brings a fresh perspective, especially on this show, because this is the World Puja Network, and everyone listening are aware of the Vedas and the Pujas and the power of unitary consciousness and oneness of mind. So I think that understanding is so wonderful, because we know we're speaking with people who are listening who really understand this deep level of oneness that we all share through the one mind that we all are.
Well, I thank you, Stephen. And I just want to say, first of all, that we are on a threshold of a revolution in consciousness. And the protocol of CSETI teaches us how to use non-local consciousness to expand our way of seeing, feeling, and hearing beyond the three-dimensional world. And once we learn how to do this, which is really what the protocol is all about, we begin to connect to so much in the invisible realm beyond us, because most of us are stuck thinking that what's real is in the three-dimensional world. And that's why I think this protocol is so crucial and so important.
Right.
Because we are in a time of learning that we're so much more capable than we have a clue about, and realizing that we are telepathic, we can remote view, we can see energy from different dimensions. And so while the protocol teaches us how to make contact with extraterrestrial civilizations, in my mind, the most important piece of this is that it teaches us to be in contact with our own incredible powers that lie in our consciousness.
Right, and that's the opening of the reality of this whole new era. Everyone says, oh, my God, it's 2012, and there are all these apocalyptic views. I said, no, what this is really about is that one big yuga, one big cycle in Vedic knowledge that lasted 400 and some thousand years is closing, and there's a 500,000-year cycle, the hallmark of which is enlightenment and universal peace that's opening, where humans will manifest the full understanding of this aspect of themselves that is infinite, this infinite aspect, the spark of the infinite that is at the root of all human consciousness and sentient capability. And that this is what is really exciting about 2012 and this particular time in the history of not just the universe, of the Earth, but of the universe. This is a universal cycle. And so, what's as above, so below, actually it's happening not just on Earth, but on planets throughout the cosmos. And as you begin to look at the studies that have recently come out where they've discovered Kepler-22b and other planets that have 72-degree atmospheres with water, they're now saying what we've been saying for 20-some years, is that every stable star system appears to have planets around it. And so the Earth is just one of billions, if not trillions, if not an infinite number of worlds filled with intelligent life. And the ones that are quite developed and who have been sort of come this way before us and who have learned how to travel amongst the stars are the ones that we're seeing in our skies and perhaps in our living rooms and in our backyards and everything when we're making contact. But they've been around for a very, very long time. You cannot go back in human history, whether you go back to the time of the ancient Vedas and the Vimanas or the ancient Mayan civilization or Aztecs or the Nazca lines or the pyramids that we find in both, not only on Mars but also in Egypt and in South America. There has never been a time when humans have been alone. It's just that there have been times when people have been more or less aware of it, or the understanding of it was clouded. We're coming out of a period right now that's been led by the Disclosure Project, of the world acknowledging that, in fact, we are being visited. But the thing that is lagging in even the world of people who study UFOs is understanding that you're not dealing with people and machines like a pilot of a 747. Yes, they have material spacecraft. Yes, they can land. Yes, when they're fully materialized, they may weigh millions of pounds. Yes, they have flesh and blood beings on board, but their technologies allow for them to move, quote unquote, and dematerialize like a Vedic city, SIDDHI, from one dimension to another faster than the speed of light. And that's the way that contact is happening around us all the time through these CE5 protocols. We call them Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind protocols that CSETI has developed. And when I first came up with this concept it's 22 years ago now. I hate to think of it. I think now my grandchildren are the ages of my children. When I first came out with this project 22 years ago, it's kind of a scary thought. But the reality is that this has taken on an enormous a sort of life of its own, where we're hearing from people all over the world, even people who've gone to the iPhone and the iPad and iPhone store. There's a CSETI contact app that you can download, and basically it has all the meditation protocols, it has the electronic tones we send out into space, it has the ability to turn your iPhone into a magnetometer that picks up magnetic field fluxes when these ET craft are moving around but aren't visible with the naked eye, but then can materialize in the blink of an eye. It's an amazing app that we've put out onto the store, and that thousands of people have now put onto their iPhones and iPads. And what you find is that the more people are doing this, the more all of the rest of us who go out on a regular basis to make contact, it's creating that morphogenic field. It potentiates contact, so we're all in this together. And so as consciousness begins to move in this direction of peaceful contact with all these civilizations, it becomes easier and easier, but the level of contact we're having, as you know, Marilyn, from your involvement over the last 2 or 3 years, it's just gone up exponentially.
Well, it is. It is. And, when you're talking about how they travel and using their consciousness, they went through, many of the civilizations, from what I understand, went through the same kind of stages of learning to use thought consciousness to even do space travel. And so that beacon is held out for us when we when we go out at night and do contact, for us to begin to use our non-local consciousness and meet them and sort of form this beacon with their consciousness. And one of the exciting things to me, Stephen, is that this is where Earth has to go now. We have to change our consciousness. And there's certainly a group of people on Earth who do not want people to understand how to use their expanded consciousness and have power over themselves in terms of what their gifts are, what we came to Earth to know, who we really, really are. And in doing these protocols, I know myself in the last 2 to 3 years have found out more about who I am and what I can be and these extraordinary abilities that now seem more real to me than half of my day in the 3D world.
Right.
And I think that's what has happened to our group here in the Northeast.
Right. Right, and that's what's so exciting, because when I hear from people from Malaysia and Japan and Romania and South Africa and South America and Brazil who are doing this, what we learn is that everyone who takes just a little bit of effort to learn the mantra meditation, the remote viewing capability, and then within the spirit of peace instead of war and paranoia, a spirit of universal peace that comes from within, to make contact within that ethical, philosophical world, then these extraterrestrial civilizations are there with bells on. I mean, I hate to use that, but sometimes literally with bells on, because we'll hear these almost like angelic tones that will emerge out of empty space around us that sound really like an angelic symphony, and there are these pure tones that will appear, and even in our electronic devices that will appear, where it'll make sounds that the electronic sensing devices we have, like magnetometers and radar detectors, cannot even make, and it'll start communicating through this in all these transdimensional ways, and then suddenly a spacecraft will just materialize and then dematerialize, or a being will materialize and dematerialize. And then you realize, well, they've been there all along. They've just been beyond what I call the crossing point of light. And that is, it's like, well, your eyes and your physical senses can only pick up on certain wavelengths. But in reality, if you're going faster than the speed of light to travel from one galaxy or one star system to another, they're using just a bit wider spectrum of reality that goes all the way from the samadhi state of pure consciousness into literally three-dimensional material form, but all the thousands of dimensions between those two. But someone said, are there 11 dimensions or 9 dimensions? I said, no. It's like, how many numbers are there between 1 and infinity? That's how many fine gradations and nuances of frequencies there are between the infinity of pure mind and the linearity of one spot in time-space. You see what I mean?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. And so when you begin to realize that, you go, wow. So depending on the development of the technological and conscious abilities of any given species and civilization and individual, you can have contact that's in this huge range, this spectrum that goes from here and now material to infinity, literally to infinity, to the near infinity, where you start getting into resonant frequencies that are, for lack of a better word, approach the celestial. And it's just absolutely stunning. And yet, we're not talking about just the, the realms that are residing in, say, the angelic or celestial realm, but civilizations that have physical bodies and physical worlds with physical spacecraft, but they're able to have sciences that access up to that level. So in other words, they have technologically developed what the ancient masters did when they developed the full level through their pujas and meditations, these cities, these Vedic conscious cities, where they could materialize, bilocate, trilocate, see remote places, see the future, pick up the Akashic record of the past, all of that. And all of that is what's fabulous, is that all of that's folded within you. It's like the great old Sufi saying, it's a rhetorical question, thinkest thyself a puny form, when within thee the universe is folded. Yeah. And it's a true statement that the entirety of all that exists, like a hologram, a quantum conscious hologram, is folded within every single person. And that's what's so beautiful, because then once you realize that, you go, well, it's not just the sky is the limit. I mean, it's infinity, and that's the real human potential.
Absolutely. Well, Stephen, oftentimes after you do a puja in the field, we have a lot more activity happen.
Oh, yes, always, yeah.
Yes, always. So I wanted to talk about, I think it was about 3 weeks ago, a CSETI night. And the reason I want to talk, this was our local group meeting, and we had, I think, 15 people, which is a really wonderful size.
Yes.
We have such dedicated people that they come from New York City up, which is about a 3-hour drive, and often they come with their families, and at the end of the night will turn around and drive home because they have something the next day. So we have a really strikingly dedicated group with quite a commitment to this process. And so we got together, and because it's winter here, and that really is prohibitive in terms of being outside, we learned to do a lot of our work indoors. And
right.
Because of that, that's really helped develop the ability to use these expanded consciousness states to see and feel and hear energy. And the other thing I just want to add, that when you can't always see this energy, and yet what's so incredible is when cameras pick it up. And so our ability, our visual spectrum is so narrow. But as you learn to do these protocols, your visual spectrum actually expands. And for many of us that night, we sat in a circle after we did your protocol, and we began seeing enormous energy come into the room. And some of us in the group are real intuitive feelers, and others can see things. And it's amazing, we can spend hours meditating together, but we often take breaks in the room just to talk about what everybody's been experiencing. And oftentimes, the part of the room where people are seeing a lot of energy and beings coming in is also the part of the room where people are feeling the energy. So we try to write our notes and corroborate what we're all going through. But some very tall beings came into the room that night. And, Stephen, they were almost fully manifested.
Right.
And energy was pretty mind-blowing. And about halfway through the night, we saw this, and this was indoors, mind you, this mist or fog rolled into the room. And it was so thick, even though the room was dark, enough light came from the outside, you could see the person, people sitting across from you. But when this fog came in, you couldn't see people at all. And in fact, one person couldn't even see her hands in front of her. And at this point, the radar detectors and the electromagnetic meter just was going off. And cold a lot throughout this whole time. And quite frankly, in the indoor work, I've never heard the radar detectors go off.
Right.
And they were going off as this mist was there. And a few people were touched, and several in their meditation saw a craft above the house. And at the very end of the night, many other things went on, and we heard tones. And at the very end of the night, one of our members who had night vision goggles went outside, but before he even had a chance to use them, he looked up at the sky, and he saw a fully manifested craft 500 feet above the house.
Wow.
I know it was amazing.
And what's interesting is that they can bilocate, so you'll have a craft that can be up in space manifested, and you can be in a house or in a building, and there will be this energy form that is in the near astral, I call it. But you can actually see it with physical eyes. It'll send off the electronics of the electronic detectors, and it is actually a representation, if you will, of the craft and everyone on board it, or individuals who are on board the craft that are actually being sort of, I call it electronic astral projection, basically.
Oh.
Okay, yeah. And that's why it looks like that, and that's why but it's electronic enough that it actually registers in the electromagnetic spectrum, and that's also why the new cameras, like we have these great new cameras that have amazingly sensitive digital light cells in them in CCDs. Those are picking up these, not only the objects, but the beings. Like if you look at what's been photographed at Joshua Tree National Park, if people go to CSETI.org, they'll see a series of pictures of an ambassador from the Andromeda galaxy that was right outside our circle, that appeared in the flash of an eye that's in a photograph. And it's this person who's about 4 to 5 feet tall with a receding hairline and kind of goggles on, who's waving to us, and he's right there in the picture. This is not a photoshopped picture. This is this being is actually there. And we were told he was from the Andromeda galaxy, which is 2.5 million light years from Earth. And what we had seen just prior to that was this sort of a sphere of light that materialized in the desert out by us. And then right after that, we heard out in the middle of the desert, I had very good night scopes, like 4th-generation night scopes that are military grade. They're the ones you have to fill out all the Homeland Security nonsense for to get them. And there was no people or animals or nothing standing over in that part of the desert, but everyone heard 3 or 4 humanoid voices speaking. And that's when then this light appeared, and in this cone of light, this ET being is there floating in sort of an electronic astral projection hovering right outside our circle. So this is, understanding the transdimensional we're talking real space age stuff here, not stuff in Close Encounters of the Third Kind that Hollywood tries to do. That is the reality of ET civilizations as they're interfacing with us when we're making conscious contact, where we're making it deliberately for a higher purpose and curiosity. And what you find is that when you get a team like yours, Marilyn, where people there are really dedicated to the purpose of contact, universal peace, pushing forward into this good future that we can see that's awaiting us. The ETs come almost, without fail. We have never had them not appear in some way or form, and it really has so much to do with not only the consciousness of the group, but their intent. And the intent really drives everything. It's like, why are those people there? And if the intent, I hate to sound too simplistic, but if there's just an innocent, pure-heartedness about doing it, then people, and they can leave all your baggage at the door and all your fears at the door and all the prejudices and all the UFO and New Age mythology at the door, you find that they come invariably, and they come in ways that are both fully manifest, but also in these really subtle, nuanced ways that are even, to me, more beautiful than if the mothership landed in the backyard.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we meet in consciousness, and that is the most far-out experience to have. And then often we do have materializations in terms of crafts nearby.
Right.
But, I'll tell you what's so interesting about this group is we try to stay connected in between times and share our dreams or meditations to help us live in this 3D world while really being committed to this less dense reality and support each other through it. And often we will hear from different members that on a particular night they had a really hard night, difficult night sleeping, and several people will, and there'll be a lot of activity in their rooms, and people all along are developing more and more remote healing abilities and intuitive knowings. Diane, one of the members, has developed in the last year and a half such incredible telepathic abilities that she will have a feeling connection with someone.
Right.
And I'll watch her hold her cell phone, and I'll know in 5 seconds it's going to ring. And she'll say the name before she has a clue who it is. And every time, and it is so eerie, she knows exactly who it is. One of our members says he never gets stopped by the cops anymore because he knows exactly where they are.
Right,
right. One of our members is a massage therapist, and the other day in her massage room, she said she had a yellow orb appear in her hand, fully materialized.
Right.
And so people, and often we'll all have similar flying dreams now. So we're experiencing so much together.
That's wonderful.
Yes, it is.
Oh, well, that's just fantastic. And what I like hearing is that, I started this project 22 years ago, but when I first had my first CE5 was back in 1973, and I was 18 years old. And when that happened up on this mountain in North Carolina, and I recount this in this sort of autobiography I wrote called Hidden Truth, Forbidden Knowledge, which I'm sure you've read. You can get it at disclosureproject.org. But at any rate, when I had this happen, it needs to be made into a film, we hope soon. We're working with an Emmy Award-winning filmmaker right now about doing this. We'll talk about this in a moment. But what happened was that I thought, how in the world can this ever be used by humanity? Because it was so wonderful what I learned how to do. And I'd had a near-death experience when I was 17, about 6 months earlier, and after that I had this experience during the near-death experience of Brahman consciousness and unity consciousness, God consciousness, and in that state I realized that the awareness within us that it allows us to be conscious, that if you just center into that, you become the conscious being. And so the drop becomes the ocean. And I then said, well, gosh, I need to learn how to do this. So that's when I learned meditation. Then I became a meditation teacher and studied Sanskrit and the Vedas and learned how to do pujas. But then when I had this experience 6 months later up in this mountaintop in North Carolina, and I'm this boy who's 18 years old with kind of long hair and hiking up in the mountains, I think, well, I'd had a sighting when I was much younger, and I went up there to meditate at sunset, and as I sat down, was starting to meditate in the west, this ET spacecraft, a beautiful, seamless silver disc fully materialized in the sky, and it was exactly like the one I had seen when I was 8 years old. And I thought, oh my God, they're back. But I didn't think anything about it. So I went into meditation, and I went into this deep samadhi state, quiet, beautiful, and I lost all track of time and space. And I must have been in meditation for at least an hour or two, because when I came out of it, it was pitch black, and this Milky Way was above me and all the stars. And at that moment, it was like a telepathic transmission came to me from space that said, behold what a beautiful universe God has made. And with that, I went into the state of consciousness I was in when I had this near-death experience. And I looked over to my right side, and here was this about a 4-foot-tall ET that was fully materialized. And he touched me on my right shoulder, and all of my hair stood on end, literally, and then I had some hair. and it was like zing, and I had this big, thick ski jacket on, but even I could see my ski jacket indent and felt this, and then I sort of just dematerialized, and for about 2 or 3 hours, I was just in this state, dematerialized in space on the spacecraft, and that's when we created these protocols that you and I keep talking about, the CE5, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, protocols when humans enter into this state, and it's greatly facilitated with mantra meditation and the puja, which we teach, and then you go into this state where you can make this sort of contact. And what I realized when this first started happening, I thought, well, this is very interesting for me. Well, what in the hell am I ever going to do about this? Because it was so out of the ordinary. You have to understand, this is 1973, almost 40 years ago. And so, but now I realize that the world really is ready to understand transdimensional, interstellar, conscious, and that so many more people understand these concepts from many different traditions, whether it's been Kabbalah or, the Gnostic tradition getting re-enlightened, or Vedic or Buddhism, or just transpersonal consciousness and psychology. There's so many more people who understand these fundamental concepts of the non-local, omnipresent nature of awareness. And so we're moving very quickly in terms of astronomical time into the world being able to really do this on a massive level. And that's what we want to potentiate in 2012. And it really is potentiated when groups like yours, Marilyn, are doing this on a regular basis and individuals do it on a regular basis, because all these individualities doing this begins to create the waveforms in reality that then build a higher and higher and higher waveform collectively. And that collectivization, it's an exponential growth in potential that happens when you have lots of individuals doing it as opposed to a few. And at the time when I was 18, of course, I didn't understand all these concepts because, but the experience was as wonderful as anything I've ever experienced since then or before. But my understanding of it now, and I understand now not only how to share it, but it's so exciting for me to hear that there are groups all over the world like yours that are now doing it, and that people are having these experiences, and that I could drop dead and it wouldn't matter. Not that I won't drop dead, but I'm just saying, my presence isn't required. And this is one of the things I always tell people. My greatest joy in taking people out onto this desert sky like we're going to be doing, or down to Marco Island in Florida in April. Those of you who want to join us, you're invited on April 15th to the 23rd. We're going to be down on this island in Florida on the Gulf of Mexico, where we had 3.5 hours one night of nonstop transdimensional contact that we filmed. And we're going to be doing that. You were there, weren't you?
Yes. It was one of the most spectacular nights that I think I experienced with CSETI expeditions. It was wonderful.
Well, and what's interesting, it turns out that, these transdimensional objects that were just like 100 yards from us, that were appearing over a 3.5 hour period, we got dozens of them on digital videotape. And we're soon, we have a CSETI YouTube channel that's kind of dormant right now, but we just have hired someone who's going to help us get a lot of this footage and a lot of this top secret witness testimony. We have like 100 hours of top secret military and corporate and CIA people who we've interviewed, but we've never had anyone who knows how to kind of get that out. We're going to start streaming like in chunks of half an hour or something every week, starting in about a month. And people are going to be astonished. So look, if you want to find out about what we're putting up there, you can go to and sign up to our mailing list at disclosureproject.org. Just sign up. It's free, and we'll notify you when we put out this footage. And we're going to start putting it out every week, something new, more and more and more. And that's what we're going to do this year. And we want it to culminate in the creation of what we're really hoping to do. And we're in negotiations with an Emmy award-winning filmmaker who's a wonderful, conscious person who really gets what we're doing. A 2-hour documentary that will have not only all of the disclosure information distilled in it, but also all this information about new energy, free energy, anti-gravity systems, and the big crescendo at the end is going to be what we're talking about today, and that's transdimensional conscious contact. And that's going to all be in this 2-hour thing that we're going to put viral. Our goal is to have about 1 billion billion people see it before December 21st, 2012. So that's what we're going to try to work on. And if you want to sign up to be someone who can be one of the folks who is the sort of a viral agent to help us get that around the world, sign up at disclosureproject.org now. And I'm also making an announcement today that what we're planning to do also is have a series of massive premieres all over the world that'll be large ones that I'll appear at. But then at the same time, when it first comes out, we want to have 1,000 people host local premieres in their high school auditorium or wherever, where 500 or 1,000 people can come, so that we have 500,000 to 1 million people see this on a big screen. And we're going to. You see what I'm saying? So we want this to just go massively out there this year, and it's got to have all these components. It must have not only the disclosure, what I call ET 101, where sort of the nuts and bolts stuff, but then it's got to then go into the reasons behind the secrecy, why the world doesn't know the truth, and that is the power oligarchs, not the 1%, but the 0.000000000000001%, that are a handful of very powerful families and corporations that control the whole global economy, that if this knowledge comes out that we're not alone and that these technologies are real, we don't need oil. We don't need coal. We don't need air pollution. Poverty will be gone. The macroeconomic system as it exists today, which is a zero-sum game where half the world is in poverty, will be replaced by a world of just absolute abundance. These are all things that can happen in a very short amount of time if we get our act together, and we must. And then the final part of it is going to be all about what you're talking about, Marilyn, that's contact. And we're going to show all this information, at the International UFO Congress, where I'm speaking on Saturday, the 25th of February. I'm going to show about 25 minutes of some of the best of these clips that we've distilled out of the hours and hours we have. But all of this information will be in this 2-hour sort of tour de force expose in collaboration, we hope, with this Emmy Award-winning filmmaker. And anyone listening who thinks they can help us with that, help us with the viral marketing of it, who can host premieres, who can help, who have evidence that they're sitting on. There are people listening who have stuff that they're sitting on. They're wondering where it should be seen. This is where it should be seen. And then after this, we're going to continue to stream all the stuff that can't be in this 2-hour piece on the YouTube channel we have, and it's just going to be relentless. That's what we're going to do this year, because this is the year for the whole world to know this, and also the whole world then to come together with millions of people making contact the way you are, Marilyn, with your team up there in New York. Imagine that happening. I mean, imagine what would be unleashed in the world, the power that would be unleashed.
Well, I think, and Stephen, even some of your video that shows how transdimensional travel comes into this dimension with the lights that we saw on the beach in Marco, when people see that, something will light up inside and they'll begin to understand themselves how to see and how it looks and what to look for, and then they'll accelerate so much faster.
Exactly.
People before me, but I watch people now, and the acceleration is just incredible.
Yeah, and people are ready to understand this because, the world really has progressed. And everyone talks about the Arab springtime. I'm saying we need a global springtime, and that the winter of this old age that's crumbling around us that we can see in all the institutions and the financial systems and the rotten economy run by a bunch of corrupt masters of the universe, that's all crumbling. So let it go. Here's what we're going to create. And it isn't about destroying anything. It's going to collapse on its own, honey. I got news for you. You don't have to even push it over the ledge. It's falling apart as we speak. What we have to be focused on, all of us who are conscious, everyone listening to the World Puja Network in particular, who are really super conscious people and enlightened people, is what are we going to put in its place? And instead of dwelling on what's fallen apart, let's have a vision that we manifest of a world of disclosure, of this unveiling of the truth, of open contact with interplanetary civilizations, and the knowledge and sciences and energy systems coming out that will turn this world into a rose garden of not only abundance but peace and justice. Because, there's no way we're going to have peace on this planet so long as there are 7 billion primates fighting over the last barrel of oil. I mean, it just isn't going to happen. So, hello, we haven't needed oil for 100 years, and, it's enough of that sort of self-flagellating nonsense. Let's snap out of it. I feel like Cher in the movie Moonstruck, where she slaps the Nicolas Cage and says, snap out of it. But, this is the year for that awakening. And it is, it was called the awakening in the Arab world. We need a global awakening, but at more than just sort of normal political stuff, but a true, deeper spiritual awakening. And that's what we really want to work on intensely this year with the help and the prayers of everyone.
Well, I love that you said that, because it is a spiritual awakening, and I think through doing this work with you, Stephen, and with the protocols, that's the most important piece right there, the spiritual awakening, realizing we can create the world as we want it. And that is about peace and harmony, and it is about being a rose garden. And that is something that's within our power, and when everybody starts realizing it, it's going to happen so quickly.
Oh, it will. It absolutely will. And in fact, one of the things that this Emmy Award-winning filmmaker and our board for CSETI and Disclosure Project are discussing is having this, instead of going through the kind of lamestream, crazy, normal media, we're talking about going through the new media, Facebook, YouTube, the Internet. Yeah. And, where if people want to own this film, that for $1 or $5, something very nominal, the price of a latte, they could get it, and it goes viral through India, through China, through Latin America. In other words, it's not going to be something where you have to buy it for $29.95 or something crazy. You just, boom, download it. It's on your iPad. It's on your smartphone. It's on your computer. Then you can share it with anyone else. But our goal will be, by doing it that way, perhaps we'll be able to raise the funds. And this is what this team wants to do, where all the proceeds of that would go into our efforts to create a R&D, a scientific laboratory to bring out these technologies. Because ultimately, we can be as conscious as we want to be. We need to lift people up from the suffering of poverty and the suffering of a decaying Gaia, that we are destroying this beautiful, sacred female planet Earth, who has given us life, is the womb of intelligent life in this little corner of the universe, and we're killing it. Her children are killing her. It's outrageous, and we can do better. And we have to bring out these new sciences and technologies that would allow every home and vehicle and business to run on free energy from the fabric of transdimensional space-time. We have the scientists who understand that. We have a lot of secret information that are technical things that could be put into, but they have to be brought out. And to do that, you're going to have a laboratory. And don't expect the Obama administration and the Department of Energy to fund this. They're giving $100 billion to nuclear power and to General Electric and Westinghouse, but ARPA-E and the DOE program, when we applied for money, gave us a zero. So it's going to have to come from us, the people, but this is the beauty of the Internet. Things that didn't exist 5 years ago, like YouTube and Facebook and whatnot, we can do this now with this information coming out, raise the funds to do it, and come forward with it. Now, not without risk. I mean, there are people who would like to see me shut my big mouth and go away, but we can do it. And once we realize we can do it and it's doable, that knowledge in and of itself is so liberating, because we do not need to be sitting here in sackcloth and ashes ripping our clothes off, as we sit around in soot from coal-fired power plants and oil, and going to the next oil war in the Middle East with whoever, when in fact we don't need any of that. That's a paradigm that is just belongs to the 1800s. And so never mind, it's the 20th century is like, I call it the missing century. But now we're in the 21st century. We're more than a decade through the 21st century. And it's time for us to say, okay, these sciences exist, this knowledge exists, let's come together and have a global spring and a complete renaissance of human civilization that's enlightened and that is interplanetary and that's peaceful and has the means for all the people of the earth to live in dignity and with justice and abundance. And it's not some kind of utopian pipe dream. It's absolutely attainable, but it's only going to be attainable if we all come together, work to do it, and have the courage to do it and not get, sort of sidetracked into what I call the sideshow of the conventional what you normally see in the media is the reality of the world. And because there's another reality of the world that's deeper and more profound that's happening, where creative people all over the world have the ability to awaken to these concepts and put their shoulder to this effort all together and move in one motion and do it. And I think this is really the year for this to become a quantum leap forward through not only the information we put out, but people doing contact collectively and then coming together to bring these technologies forward. That would really be an act of enormous compassion, because it's really about helping all of humanity and the earth herself return to a pure state, but it's not Luddite where we're going back into the caves. It's where there would be a very high-tech civilization, but one that isn't dependent on the current energy and macroeconomic system that requires so much poverty and suffering and so many wars.
Hear, hear.
So, other than that we have nothing to do this year. But anyway, that's what's so exciting, and I know that this is something that can be achieved, and I think that many people sense that, those of us who are on this planet at this time, not that any of us are perfect, and not that any of us are saints, and not that any of us are anything but ordinary people, but that somehow, because the universe wants this to happen, because Gaia wants it to happen, because the 20,000 children not yet born on Earth who are waiting in this great matrix of consciousness in a waiting room in the cosmos to come to Earth for the next 500,000 years of 20,000 generations of children yet unborn, they're all pulling for us to get our act together and do this. And let's face it, we're here now.
Yes, we are. I'll tell you, Stephen, because of your work, and there is so much information from so many sources now coming out. And I think as people realize that these devices, this technology you're talking about, has been around for decades, some of it, that we could have come out of these old paradigms before now, but now it's going to happen. I think as people, I'm watching people begin to really accept the truth that it is time now, and how incredible that a lot of this stuff is kept secret so long, and there's been so much suffering on Earth because of it, and people are ready to turn that page.
Oh, yes, absolutely. People really are ready, and it's about informing them. I think most people just simply don't have the full extent of the knowledge they need, and they've been deliberately miseducated by folks who benefit from a current paradigm, for lack of a better word, both macroeconomically, but I think also in the realm of the spirituality, institutions, educational institutions. There are a lot of, shall we say, interest groups that benefit from the current ignorance on these issues. And I'll never forget, in fact, that some years ago I was meeting with a scientist from the Jet Propulsion Laboratories, JPL, and he was telling me about these amazing ancient structures that are on Mars that are of an extraterrestrial civilization that are very, very old. That we had filmed, and I actually met with some people at Goddard Space Flight Center who had analyzed some of those pictures and said they absolutely are artificial structures. And I was talking to this JPL scientist, and he said, well, we really can't let that information out. I said, why? It's not an operational UFO that would, threaten ExxonMobil or the Carlyle Group or, whoever. He says, no. He says, you don't understand. If people knew that was real, they know there's an ancient connection from that to the pyramids that are on Earth, and it would undermine the creation myth and the orthodox belief system, and I'm quoting now, of every orthodox religion on Earth. And I said, well, good. He says, oh, no, you don't understand. These people have enormous amounts of power. And this is a scientist telling me this, who was sitting on this stuff at the Jet Propulsion Laboratories. And I went, Jesus, this is nuts, I think Christ would be spinning in his grave or wherever he is, But the whole concept of, people can't handle this because it's going to undermine whatever orthodoxy, whether it be religious or scientific or economic or just keep adding them on. And so I think that people have to understand that there is a very big change coming, and that's what 2012 is about. And I'm focusing on the positive force of creating a new civilization here and the transformation of the current state of the world into its potential for this new big cycle, this yuga, that all the Vedic masters have known about and foreseen, this age of enlightenment that's going to last unbroken for 500,000 years of unbroken peace and interstellar peace and universal peace. And that the foundation for that is not just one bit of knowledge, but it's all of this. And that's what we have to bring out and share with compassion, but also we can't be shy about it. We just have to say this is the truth. And
I'll tell you, Stephen, what I've seen recently, people are ready more than I've ever seen them be ready. It's almost like the jewel of a memory of all this knowing is coming up to the surface and doesn't have to be tagged too much for them to be motivated to learn more and more. And I watch people, both in my own job as a psychologist, but I'm watching people begin to accelerate their own consciousness work, but also not feel like this is such a strange thing, but more and more familiar to something that brings deeply through inside themselves. So I think people are ready.
Oh, I do too. And I think this is why what we want to do this year is bring people from the knowledge of disclosure, what I call ET 101, to the knowledge of these sciences and technologies and what the world could be with them, to the knowledge of conscious contact and trans-dimensional reality. And a lot of people think, I had someone, who's a sort of a policy wonk in Washington say to me not long ago, oh gosh, this seems so futuristic. Is the world ready for this? I said, ready or not, we're going to have to be, but not only that, but they are, because what you find is that more than half of the population believe that we're not alone. A huge number of people know that there is this aspect of trans-dimensional reality, have had experiences with lucid dreams, precognition, all kinds of things. And so it's like you're not allowed to talk about it in polite company, perhaps, and by polite company I mean everyone trying to be conventional, but we don't have time for those pretenses anymore. And I tell people that we have to find the courage of our voice, speak the truth, and bring the world forward in a way that's conscious and peaceful. And I think this is what's exciting about this coming year is that is more and more people will be learning this information, and it is going to reach a critical mass. And
if people want to gather their own courage, I encourage them to go to a CSETI expedition and get an opportunity to work with you, because I have never met anybody in my life who exemplifies moral courage like you do, Stephen. And it always, in my own journey, gives me the fire to walk with my own moral courage on this path. And I know we're coming to the end. I just had to say that because it's the truth, and I think everybody would be so inspired coming to a CSETI expedition. I have to tell you this, though, Stephen. I, the other day, was in a meditation, and I had the most marvelous remote view of where we're going to be out in the desert. And I had no idea what the terrain looked like, but in the remote view, it was absolutely clear, and this most amazing craft came of beings called the heart breathers, and I won't go into the details because we won't have time on this show, but this craft came in, and I looked at the terrain in this incredible remote view of where we were going to be, and I was so haunted by it that I went on the internet and I brought up the terrain of where we're going to be, and almost to the exact place, and there was one view of this terrain that was exactly what was in my remote view.
I know, isn't that exciting? And I've been having similar experiences, and where we're going to be, it's going to be right near this place where there are all these ancient Native American petroglyphs and holy sites. Yeah, it's amazing. And, by the way, those of you who've heard us mention this, you can go to CSETI.org and see where we're going to be. El Marco Island in Florida from April 15th to the 21st. And then in Colorado, we're going to be up in the high desert June 18th to the 24th. And then we're going to be up on Mount Shasta in August from the 12th to the 18th, and then we'll be out in the California desert again in November. So we do these, 4 or 5 times a year. If you want to join us, you can find out there, and I hope to see some of you there. And if you cannot join us, then you can be there with us in consciousness, and you can get these. The whole training kit is available online at disclosureproject.org, or you can, if you have an iPhone or an iPad, you can get this app, the CSETI Contact app. That's just an amazing tool that you can carry with you, and you can go out with, if you don't have 15 people, it's fine. You can go out with 2 or 3 or 4 people and do this, and you'll be amazed at once you understand the principles and the protocols in meditation and remote viewing. It's really very simple to make this contact, and the ETs are waiting for us to come together in this common meeting space of consciousness to do this, and they really are waiting for us. And the more of us that join in this place of the placeless, if you wish to look at it that way, the more it potentiates this massive and beautiful transformation that is all about what's happening on Earth here in 2012.
Yes.
Well, I'd like to thank you, Marilyn, for your wonderful support and your insights, and I'll see you soon and at the conference. And to everyone else, I'd like to encourage you to get on disclosureproject.org or CSETI.org and sign up and get onto our mailing list so we can make you part of this network of getting the information out this year as we begin to put more and more information out through the internet this year. Now we have someone who will be working part-time doing nothing but that for us. And I'm not going to be doing it because I'm an idiot with technical things. Everyone who's met me for 2 seconds knows that. But we have someone who isn't an idiot with technical things, thank God, who will be doing this, and other people who can help us with this documentary, with the viral premiere we want to do. We're hosting events as this movie comes out later this year in 2012. Be in touch, and I hope we can all work together and make this a reality. And I'd like to thank also the folks at the World Puja Network who very kindly let us have this time to share with all of you the work we're doing and the advances and the exciting events that are happening with CSETI and Disclosure Project. So until next time, keep looking up, and thank you, Marilyn, and God bless you all.